And I am coming at you on this beautiful Wednesday. I'm in Arizona, so it's a hot Wednesday. And we are talking about intercultural creativity, cultural factors, and my beautiful time on the Donors Choose board, and just how that really changed a lot of mindset frameworks. And I'm just really, people say that they love learning from me because I'm authentic. I really share things from my life. My life is like laying out to be a lesson plan now of things to do and things not to do, things to be aware of, and then hooking it to the cultural competence, the creative journeys, and also the neuroscience behind what is going on with our brain. I'm looking to develop a new field, intercultural creativity, but also intercultural neuro-creativity. What does it look like to really understand how our brain works and how we can really hack our brain, know our brain, love our brain, so we can be better creative and better connected to one another with different lived experiences. I'm first going to start off with the reason why I'm doing this whole Diamond Mentor moment was something that I read in my own book, because I do read my book from time to time. I'm going to read it to you really quick. It's about the gem number 6, authentic adaptation. And I said, leaving an intense board meeting, I felt inspired by our students, teachers around the nation. The organization I had just left was moving millions of dollars, $500 million by that point, into public education. Donors from around the country could fund classrooms projects from the bayou to the beach and every place in between. And this organization, DonorsChoose.org, was led by world-class board of directors. Many of the members were acclaimed professionals leading multi-million-dollar organizations, and a few were leading billion-dollar organizations. We had, the CEO of LinkedIn was on there at the time, the senior vice president of Facebook, the former CEO of Essence and Ebony magazine. We had actresses on there and actors, and the president of CAA, which I think they just had a huge merger this week at 7,500 million. So these were pretty heavy hitters on this board. Needless to say, as an elementary school teacher who drove a 1999 Nissan Sentra, this was a new culture that I was unaccustomed to. My classroom budget was $1,000 a year for my students, and so they were dealing with budgets slightly higher than mine. In time, I adapted to this impressive world of thought leaders, movers, and shakers who operated at a level I had never been exposed to before. It was mind-blowing. Here's the thing. After 2 years of being on the board, I had fully learned how to adapt to that cultural environment. I felt comfortable, included, and a part of the team. One clear day in June, I remember leaving the board meeting and heading back to my hotel room to encounter an experience that opened my authentic adaptation eyes in a whole new way. Now, if you want to see what happens after that, you got to get the book. But I wanted to talk about that line that said, after 2 years of being on the board, I finally felt included. And so I was rereading that and I was thinking, wait, I hope people don't think it took 2 years for the board to allow me to feel included. They were the most welcoming board, the most compassionate and inclusive board. Donors Choose has been doing a lot more than most organizations that size and in that area for their equity work, their justice work, their diversity and inclusion strategies, really ahead of the game, and the board the same way. So they were very welcoming to me. But here's why I wanted to do this live and this podcast. Is because we are in a culture, we are in a society that really has people determine their value and determine their worth and the quality of their ideas by their title, their position, their salary, and their material possessions. Whether you see this explicitly or implicitly, the media, everywhere you see advertising, even sometimes in just the curriculum, we are saying that people are worth more, they're valuable, more valuable, their ideas are more valuable depending on their salary and their title and their material possessions. Now, consciously, that sounds not right, but we do it all the time. It's a bias that a lot of people have. And so I realize that I was conditioned the same way. Even though the board was so welcoming and so compassionate and so inviting to me, the external culture was one of inclusion and belonging. The internal culture of my own mind was the opposite. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today, because a lot of people that I talk to, that I mentor, especially a lot of youth, I really want you to learn from this so you don't go through what I did. So you don't go through the 2 years of not feeling that your ideas are going to be seen on the same level as some of the other members that you might be going into. That's very, very important. And really, that's what really intercultural creativity is about. That our creativity, our creative thinking, and our ability to see ourselves as created is highly affected by what our mindset is and what our perspective is. And so, you know me, I'm the teacher, so I do have slides. And I'm going to teach a quick lesson during this Diamond Mentor moment. We are looking at how being on the board literally changed my brain. So the first one, I'm talking about mindset and being an educator, and how our nation, let's be real, doesn't really value the education profession like other nations do. Looking at, the pay as an elementary school teacher, you're coming in at 40,000, maybe 50,000. Whereas my twin and I, she went into the private sector. She got her degree in astrophysics, and I got mine in human development and psychology to go into education. And we started about the same rate. Her income doubled mine within 5-10 years. I would get texts, I got a raise, I got a raise. And there's people in education who their salary has like stayed still for years. And so do we really value our educators? And so all of this has been being communicated to my mind of, am I really worthy of this seat? When I'm around so many powerful people who, my yearly income is their, monthly income. And that just did a mind shift on me. It was really, really difficult to overcome at first. And there's just the board of when I was on the board. A few board members have changed within the past few years, but I want to talk about perspective. Okay, we have perspectives. There's different types of perspectives that we have. We have a direct perspective on self. This is what we think about ourselves. Your direct perspective on yourself is highly influenced by the cultural messages that are around you, the family messages, your workplace messages, societal messages. And it's influenced by your demographics of how the society that you're in, the culture that you're in, really looks at the demographics that you identify with. So that is directive perspective on self. Then you have a directive perspective on others, how you see others. Once again, looking at, and I'm not going to go talk about in-group, out-group, and what the brain is doing with that. That's a whole other podcast. But looking at how culture affects your ability to have a perspective with other people. Don't forget, you don't see the way life is, you see the way life as you perceive it. And your perceptions are highly influenced by culture. And then there's a new one that I would probably want to introduce to you that you may not have heard of, something called meta perspective. This is, what do we think other people are thinking about us? And so that was really what happened, of me not feeling that I can really give my creative best and give my thoughts and be authentically me, because I was so concerned about the meta perspective. What are they thinking about me? And then me being focused on these other things that they're probably not even concerned about. That I was just conditioned for 35 years to say my value is based on my title, my salary, and my material possessions. And so therefore the way that my ideas will be construed is construed through that lens. And that with this group was not true. But even though, here's the thing, and I love this quote, it's not about what people are saying about you, it's about what you're saying to yourself. That is the truth that you're building. And so I had to switch what I was saying to myself. And so being aware of meta perspective. Another aspect I want to talk about meta perspective is the fact that it's almost prideful to assume that you know what people are thinking. I had a mentor at the time. I had a few mentors that really helped me get through this mental block. Coach Tony McGee and a good friend Daniel Luna. I remember Daniel saying, "Genein, they did not ask you to be a part of the board because of your accounting abilities. They need you to be a part of this board because you have a perspective that they have been longing for. You have the teacher perspective, and even within the teacher perspective, you're in a position that is an extra interesting position. I taught elementary school. I ran a nonprofit for 6 through 12. I taught at the local university, CSUN. So I got to see the entire pipeline in the same week. And I got to bring all of those experiences and perspectives with grant writing and with all of the being on the Donor Shoes platform to the boardroom. And so my good friend Daniel Luna was just like, Genein, that's why they need you in the seat, because of your perspective. Stop getting caught up on this other stuff and focus on you being authentically you. And that was a good push out that I had something important to offer. And I just remember being in the seat the first few meetings, like, okay, Genein, just say something, just say one thing to get through the meeting, because you don't want to. Seth Godin wrote about this, and I love it. He said, if you go to a meeting and say nothing, it's a double loss, because not only did you not give your creative ideas, you took the spot of someone else who could have. And that always stuck with me, that you want to be able to present your creative perspectives when you're invited or brought to the table or preparing your own table, and allow the perspectives of others to have airtime as well. And so looking at this concept of perspective is key for my young people listening, my young women who are going to be in these power seats one day, and you're going to have to work on showing up with confidence and knowing that, like, I knew what I knew. And now I got on the board in 2015 and then rolled off around 2020. We have some other amazing teachers who are on the board as well. Now I can walk into a room. I don't care who's in the room. I know what I know. I know my research is solid. I know this is idea that is worth spreading. I know that this is where the workforce is going, being able to have intercultural creative platforms for people. I know that the neuroscience is where the future's going, understanding how to really know our brain and to use our brain in the right way to be creative and to connect with people and to control unconscious bias. I know it. And I know that there's a lot that I don't know. And I'm always learning as well. So that intellectual humility as well. But I can go into a room and I can speak with confidence, and donors choose that time on the board and dealing with these mental ceilings that were there, these invisible mental ceilings, was huge because they forced me to break through. Another huge thing that literally changed my brain, and we're going to quickly get to the brain part before I close out, is, once again, my classroom budget was $1,000 for the year. My income starting as a teacher, 40, 50 grand for the year. Sitting at that table and having conversations, and this is public information because they're a public entity, but just millions of dollars of flowing like over my head of conversations. And it was just like we were talking about bubblegum, but it was millions of dollars. I quickly had to break my previous mind maps and build new ones quickly in order to handle the level of resources that they were trying to, solidify and allocate and do all of that. And so now, doing what I do and speaking around the world and doing trainings with huge corporations, but also with school districts and teachers, and still running my nonprofit and still working with my students face to face, I can walk in a room and talk numbers that would have blown my mind 5 years ago. And my students, and this is really important, I want my students to have this experience earlier on. So if they're called to start creating programs and creating products and services where there's more zeros than they're used to seeing, it doesn't throw them off. And that's the thing. When your brain starts to do something over and over again, it myelinates. The neurons myelinate. It's like you riding a bike for the first time versus riding a bike for the 50th or the 500th time. Your brain, the neurons just get together, they myelinate, and it's easier to do that action. Same thing with mindset, right? Same thing with numbers. numbers, money, it's an idea. Money is an idea. It's a concept, right? And so that's why my saying is your creative health affects your financial wealth. So that was another huge way that Donors Choose Board physically, and I mean physically, changed my brain. They got me from thinking of a budget of $1,000 for a year and thinking on a much larger scale. Once I said, like I said before, they moved $500 million into classrooms around the nation. And so that's something to consider. All right, so we're big on brain, and I'm going to bring to the stage Dr. Michael Platt. Those of you who follow my work, you know Dr. Platt and I really vibe on the same tendencies of saying every leader needs to understand how the brain works and how the brain works in those who are on their team, because you can lead better. You can lead with more empathy, and you can have more self-control and support those who are growing in that area as well. So here is Dr. Platt.
Structure and function by exercising it. So, and that exercise can take a number of different forms, even just interacting with more people, getting out, meeting people, talking to them, getting to know them. That's an important way to exercise your social brain. It will cause it to grow. And some of these other things that we talk about, like perspective taking the perspective of others, literally working on that every day for 5 minutes at a time, will cause your social brain network in your head to physically change. And you'll actually be better at relating to people, once you've done that for a few weeks.
All right, so that is Dr. Platt talking about the importance of getting into different cultural situations, meeting different types of people. So once again, even though it was uncomfortable, my heart was beating, especially during those first 2 years. I had to really coach myself to even speak up. My brain was literally changing because I was making connections with people who I would not normally have had access to. Like who goes and hangs out with the CEO of LinkedIn and all these other places, and Teresa Gao, the amazing venture capitalist. I would not have met her ever had the amazing CEO of Donors Choose at that time, Charles Best, invited me to share my perspective in the same group. And so because of that, I now had what Dr. Platt mentioned, an increased social brain, because now I was adding in stories and lived experiences and different types of just ways of seeing things, perspectives into my social construct. And this is very important. Dr. Lisa Fieldman Barrett talks about this as well. Here she is.
Doing it when you're grown up. So if you read books, see movies, talk to people over coffee, their experiences to some extent become your experiences. And like I said, that's a double-edged sword, because if you surround yourself with people who are exactly like you and believe exactly what you believe, and that's how your brain is wired too. And you become, for many reasons, sort of uncomfortable with differences and complexity, because everything is pretty much the same as you. And you become uncomfortable for reasons we could talk about that have to do with the brain and how it works. But the point is that you're always cultivating the environment that's wiring your brain, always.
All right, straight from Dr. Lisa Fieldman Barrett, you are always cultivating the environment, and your brain is changing in the environments due to the environments that you are in. And so being in that Donors Choose environment, like I kept saying over and over again, it literally changed my brain because it wasn't my cultural norm. If I went to go speak in front of teachers, like I've done at several conferences, hey, I got this. This is what I know how to do. These are my people. These are my educators. But because I got shifted into a new environment, my brain didn't have any schemas, which are the order of how things are run. I have people on the C-suite, sending me emails saying, Genein, you're doing a great job. You might want to be mindful of this thing and be mindful of that thing, because there is a schema on how the board meetings were ran. There's a schema on how people who are C-suites of multi-million-dollar companies, how they talk, how they share ideas, and how perspectives are going. And so being aware of that, just being exposed to that. And I call myself the connector, because now I go to my students who are in Canoga Park, usually from low wealth areas, usually the first to go to college, or really have the potential to go into some of these arenas, I go back to them and say, here are some things that you can do. Here's how you get your LinkedIn up. I had this, Jeff, the CEO of LinkedIn, did a small video for my students. They got to get a message directly from him, and just to really empower them to saying, if this is something that you want to get into, it's attainable. You can do it. It's not a far off, located on Mars mission. It is attainable. You can do it. So I just wanted to end by saying that being on the Donors Choose board was amazing. It was an honor to do it, and it was an honor to help the organization with my creative ideas, my perspective, and also help the teachers and the students as well. Let me see if maybe take that off, and let me add this one up. And so I'm going to show you the brain, and then I'm going to wrap it up. If you want to see what happens in the story, you can grab the book. And I just love sharing that story in here and really highlighting that line in there. That's why it took me 2 years to feel included on the Donors board, not because of the board. They were so inclusive and compassionate, but because of my mental structure and my mind maps that were conditioned to think that my worth and my value and the quality of my ideas were hinged upon my salary and my material possessions, when they're not. They're hinged upon me knowing what I know and having confidence in the work that I was presenting. So I just want to share that story with you. It was a long Diamond Mentor moment. Normally these are like 10 minutes or less, but I just want to share that and hope that you continue to shine bright like a diamond. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.